Welcome back. Please like, share the video, and subscribe to the channel.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Alex.
And I'm Jamie. We have some breaking news today about Venezuela that everyone is talking about. It's a major shift in U.S. foreign policy.
Right. President Trump just announced on Truth Social that he is canceling a previously expected second wave of military attacks against the country.
Wow, that's a big change. Why the sudden stop in military action?
Well, it's because of what happened recently. The dramatic arrest of Nicolas Maduro and his wife during that nighttime raid. President Trump says the current strategy is working well together and that the raid was a huge success.
Exactly. And the president mentioned that the main goal of the U.S. intervention is his doctrine of keeping drugs out of our country. He's really focused on national security.
Right. But now that the arrest has happened, the focus is shifting from the military to the economy. In fact, President Trump is hosting a high-stakes meeting at the White House with top oil industry executives.
I saw that. They are discussing a $100 billion investment to rebuild Venezuela's energy infrastructure. It's been crumbling for years, so that's a massive project.
It is. Analysts say the goal is to use Venezuela's oil reserves to stabilize the region and secure domestic energy prices here at home. It's a very bold move.
True, but things are still pretty tense in Washington, aren't they?
Oh, definitely. There's a lot of political friction. The Senate just passed a War Powers resolution with a very narrow 52-47 vote.
Right, and that resolution aims to limit the president's ability to conduct future strikes without getting approval from Congress first. Interestingly, 5 Republicans joined the Democrats in that vote.
You know, President Trump was not happy about it. He criticized the move, saying it greatly hampers American self-defense and national security.
It's a classic power struggle between the president and the Senate. But despite that, the administration is moving forward. Next week, they are scheduled to meet with the Venezuelan opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado.
It really feels like a new phase, Jamie. We're moving from military action to economic redevelopment.
It's definitely a story we'll be following closely. Thanks for joining us for this update.
See you next time.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Tech Talk Daily. I'm Alex.
And I'm Jamie. Today, we are diving into the most exciting highlights from the final day of CES 2026 in Las Vegas.
There was so much to see this year, but honestly, Jamie, I think the biggest star of the show was a Lego brick?
Right? It sounds like a toy for kids, but the new Smart Brick is actually a huge technical achievement. It's a standard-sized Lego block, but it's packed with a tiny computer chip and special sensors.
Exactly. These sensors can detect motion and orientation. That means the brick knows if it's being tilted or moved. It even knows when it's close to other bricks.
Wow, and it has built-in speakers too, right? So if you're building a spaceship, it might actually make engine noises as you fly it around the room. Experts are calling it the biggest evolution for the company since they invented the minifigure.
It's a whole new era of interactive play. But moving from toys to tools, we have to talk about Samsung. They finally let people get their hands on the Galaxy Z Trifold.
I've been waiting for this. It's a massive 10-inch screen that folds twice to become a regular smartphone. It's basically a tablet that fits in your pocket.
Well, a large pocket. It's a bit bulky, and it costs $2,500. But you know, many people at the show said it's a legitimate laptop replacement for power users.
I can see that. I mean, why carry a laptop if your phone can do everything? Plus, Samsung is also winning the size war with their 130-inch TV concept. It's absolutely mammoth.
It's incredible. But CES isn't just about gadgets. It's about the economy, too. Siemens and NVIDIA announced a massive partnership to use AI and digital twins to automate factories.
That's a big deal. You know, President Trump has been very focused on modernizing American industry. President Trump often talks about using this kind of advanced technology to bring manufacturing jobs back to the U.S.
Exactly.
Using AI to manage supply chains could make our factories much more competitive. It's a very interesting time for both tech and the country.
It really is. From smart toys to AI-driven revolutions, the future looks very busy.
Definitely. Well, that's all for today's episode. Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today, we're talking about something that affects almost everyone's wallet, the cost of buying a home.
That's right, Alex. And we have some massive news coming from the White House. President Trump has just announced a huge $200 billion plan to help lower mortgage rates.
Wow, $200 billion. That is a lot of money. So, Jamie, how exactly is President Trump doing this?
Well, he issued a sweeping directive to two big groups, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Basically, he ordered them to buy $200 billion in what they call mortgage-backed securities.
Right. And for our listeners, that's just a fancy way of saying the government is putting money into the housing market. By doing this, they hope to drive down those high interest rates that have been making it so hard to buy a house lately.
Exactly. Early estimates suggest this could lower rates by about 0.25%. Now, I know that sounds small, but on a big house loan, that saves a lot of money every single month.
You know, it really does add up. President Trump says affordability is the central pillar of his agenda right now, especially with the midterm elections coming up this November. He wants to show voters he is taking direct action.
It's definitely a big move. But he isn't just focusing on the banks. President Trump is also targeting corporate landlords, those huge investment firms like Blackstone.
Oh, right. He's been using them as convenient scapegoats for the housing crisis. He's even threatening to pass new regulations to stop them from buying so many single-family homes.
Exactly. But we should mention that some experts are a little nervous. They worry that throwing $200 billion into the economy might actually fuel inflation if we don't start building more houses, too.
That's a good point. It's a bit of a whirlwind right now. On top of this housing news, President Trump is also pushing for a $500 billion increase in defense spending.
Wow, it sounds like a lot is happening all at once. Investors are definitely watching the markets closely to see how all this affects stability.
They certainly are. Well, that's all for today's housing update. If you're looking to buy a home, keep your eyes on those rates.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Today, we have some major news about the media you might listen to or watch every day.
That's right, Alex. We're talking about the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, or the CPB. After nearly 60 years of service, the board of directors just voted to formally dissolve the organization.
Wow, 58 years to be exact. That is a very long history. Our listeners probably know the CPB as the group that helps send federal money to NPR and PBS. So, Jamie, why is this happening right now?
Well, it really comes down to a big shift in government spending. President Trump and the Republicans in Congress led a decisive push to gut the agency's budget. This past summer, they actually rescinded or took back about $1.1 billion in funding.
$1 billion? That's a massive amount of money to lose. But I'm wondering, couldn't they just stay open on a much smaller scale? You know, just keep a few people in the office?
The board actually discussed that, but they decided it was better to close entirely than to stay dormant. They were worried that an inactive organization could be co-opted or manipulated by new leaders who might not act in the best interest of independent media.
I see. So they are closing to protect the idea of independence. But what does this actually mean for the programs we love?
Well, the big names like NPR and PBS have a lot of private donors, so they will likely find a way to keep going. But the real impact will be felt in rural areas. There are over 1,500 local stations out there, Alex.
Right. And for those small local stations, this federal money can make up 50% of their entire operating budget. That's half their money gone.
Exactly. If those stations close, critics say we will see news deserts. These are places where people have no local source for news, weather reports, or even educational shows for their children.
That sounds like a huge loss for those communities. But I know there's another side to this story, right?
Definitely. Supporters of President Trump's decision argue that the government shouldn't use public money to fund media outlets. They often perceive these stations as having a political bias.
It's a very intense debate. In the meantime, the agency in Washington, D.C. is shutting down and hundreds of people are losing their jobs.
It's truly the end of an era for public broadcasting.
It sure is. Thanks for explaining this complicated situation to us, Jamie.
Of course. See you all in the next episode.
Welcome back to our Daily Tech Update. I'm Alex.
And I'm Jamie. Today, we have a massive story about the giants of the stock market. Are you ready for a shakeup?
I am, because for the first time since 2019, Alphabet, the parent company of Google, has officially overtaken Apple in total value.
Wow, that is a huge milestone. In the business world, we call this market capitalization. It basically means the total price tag of the entire company.
Exactly. For years, Apple was the king, but now Alphabet has moved into that top spot. You might be wondering, why is this happening now?
Well, it's all about AI, artificial intelligence. Alphabet has been using an AI-first business model. They are putting AI into everything, from Google Search to their cloud platforms.
Right. Investors are really excited about that. On the other hand, Apple is facing some headwinds. That's a common English idiom for difficulties or obstacles. Their hardware sales, like iPhones, are slowing down a bit.
You know, it's a real tug of war for dominance. While Apple is struggling with regulatory rules in Europe and changing tastes in China, Alphabet is soaring.
It's also important to look at the bigger picture. Under the current administration, President Trump has frequently spoken about the importance of American tech dominance. As President Trump focuses on the economy, these market shifts become even more significant for investors.
That's a great point, Alex. Market analysts say we are seeing a rotation. This means investors are moving their money from companies that make physical hardware to companies that build AI software and infrastructure.
Exactly. It's not just Alphabet either. Companies like NVIDIA are also doing very well. These are all part of the Magnificent Seven stocks. However, some of those other big companies are struggling with rising interest rates.
It looks like this focus on AI will define the market for the rest of 2026. Alphabet's integration of AI into YouTube and their advertising business has really given them the lead.
So, will Apple find a way to jump back to the top? Or is the era of hardware dominance over?
It's hard to say, but for now, Alphabet is the new leader of the pack.
Thanks for listening today. We hope this helped you learn some new business English terms.
See you in the next episode.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. Today, we're diving into some major news from the world of technology and global politics. Jamie, have you seen the headlines about NVIDIA?
I have, Alex. It's actually quite a surprising move. Reports say that China is set to approve the purchase of NVIDIA H200 chips for commercial use this quarter.
Wow, that is big. For our listeners who might not know, NVIDIA is the company that makes the brains for artificial intelligence. The H200 is one of their most powerful AI processors.
Exactly. Usually, there are very strict rules about selling this kind of high-tech gear to China. This development is a rare exception to the trade restrictions we've seen lately.
Right. It's interesting because President Trump has been very firm with his America First trade posture. He has kept a close eye on what technology leaves the U.S., but this seems like a pragmatic step. Pragmatic just means being practical and realistic.
That's a great word to learn. And you're right, it's practical. But there's a catch. The approval is only for specific commercial companies. They want to ensure the technology isn't diverted or moved to military use or state surveillance.
That makes sense. They want the tech to help businesses, not to build weapons. Investors are already celebrating. NVIDIA stock rose 3% just on this news.
I saw that. Investors see China as a vital revenue stream, a major source of money. China really needs these chips right now to modernize its tech sector and help its economy grow.
It's a high-stakes game, though. Even though things look good today, some analysts are being cautious. They think this green light could be revoked if political tensions rise.
You mean like the recent discussions about President Trump's interest in Greenland or those new tariffs on Mexican imports?
Exactly. Those kinds of issues can make the relationship between countries a bit rocky. If things get too tense, this chip deal could be canceled quickly.
For now, though, it's a boost for the global supply chain. It shows that even with strict rules, there's still some room for cooperation in the AI race.
It's a fascinating balance between business and politics. Thanks for breaking it down with me, Jamie.
Anytime, Alex. See you all in the next episode.
Welcome back to our daily news update. I'm Alex.
And I'm Jamie. Today we're discussing a major headline. President Trump has announced he is officially withdrawing the National Guard from several big American cities.
Right. We're talking about Chicago, Los Angeles, and Portland. It's a pretty big retreat from the aggressive security campaign we've seen recently.
Wow. So why the sudden change? I thought President Trump's law and order platform was a cornerstone of his second term.
It definitely is, Jamie. But the administration hit some serious legal walls. Several governors in what we call blue states successfully sued to stop the deployment.
Oh, I see. So when we say blue states, we mean states where the Democratic Party is in power, right?
Exactly. Those governors argue that having the National Guard on their soil was an unconstitutional overreach. They basically felt it actually made local tensions worse instead of solving problems.
That makes sense. It's like a power struggle between the states and the federal government. But are the troops leaving every city?
Not quite. They are actually staying in New Orleans and Memphis, and those places, state officials have expressed support for the federal presence.
Interesting. And they're still in Washington, D.C. too, right?
Yes, they are. That's because the mayor of D.C. doesn't have the same legal control over the guard that a governor has.
I've noticed public opinion seems to be shifting lately. People are still very upset about that tragedy in Minnesota, where the officer killed a 37-year-old woman.
Exactly. That incident really intensified the public opposition, so it looks like the administration is pivoting.
Pivoting? That means they are changing their focus or direction, right?
You got it. President Trump recently mentioned in an interview that he wants to focus on hitting land near the southern border.
So instead of being in the cities, the troops might be used for military operations against drug cartels.
That seems to be the new plan. It's a major shift in how the government is using its forces.
Wow, things are moving fast. Thanks for breaking that down for us, Alex. It's much easier to understand now.
My pleasure. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next time. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. I'm Alex.
And I'm Jamie. Today we're talking about a very somber anniversary for the city of Los Angeles.
Right. Friday marks exactly 1 year since the perfect storm of wildfires devastated the Pacific Palisades and several other Los Angeles suburbs.
Perfect storm. That's a powerful phrase, Alex. For our listeners, that usually means a situation where several bad things happen at the same time to make a disaster even worse.
Exactly. In this case, the fires were so fast and intense that they decimated or completely destroyed over 16,000 buildings. We're talking about homes, schools, and local businesses. Sadly, 31 people lost their lives.
Wow, it's just heartbreaking. And even though a year has passed, the recovery is incredibly slow, isn't it?
It really is. Thousands of people are still living in temporary housing. LA is already one of the most expensive real estate markets in the country, so finding a new place to live is a huge challenge.
I read that many neighborhoods still look like a disaster zone.
You see empty lots with blackened foundations and weeds growing over them.
Right. Homeowners are stuck in a perfect storm of their own, untangling complicated insurance claims while facing rising construction costs. It's a mess.
You know, I actually heard President Trump speak about this recently. President Trump mentioned that the federal government is staying updated on the recovery efforts and that the administration is looking into how federal funds can help these communities get back on their feet.
That's right. President Trump's administration has been under pressure to ensure that the city gets its social and physical footing back. But there is also a major reckoning happening among city officials.
A reckoning? You mean they're looking for someone to blame?
Well, more like looking at the failures. Investigations showed that the emergency alerts didn't reach thousands of people. On top of that, the evacuation routes became totally clogged with traffic as people tried to escape.
That is terrifying. It makes you wonder, is Los Angeles actually ready for the next one?
That's the big question, Jamie. While some people want to build back stronger, others are worried that these massive firestorms are simply the new norm.
It's a tough situation for the whole community. Thanks for sharing this update, Alex.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. Today we have some massive news coming out of the White House that is really shaking up the stock market.
It certainly is, Alex. President Trump has just proposed a huge $500 billion increase in annual defense spending. That is a staggering amount of money, even for the U.S. government.
Wow, $500 billion. Now, the main goal here is to modernize the U.S. military. President Trump wants to make sure the military can handle new global threats. He even mentioned using these funds for a new campaign against cartels.
Right, but there is a major twist to the story. Even though there's all this new money on the table, President Trump is setting a very strict condition for the companies that want it.
Exactly. He is strictly banning any defense company that receives these federal funds from doing stock buybacks or paying out dividends.
For our listeners who might not know, a stock buyback is when a company buys its own shares to make them more valuable. President Trump argued that taxpayer money should be used for innovation and hardware, not for lining the pockets of Wall Street executives.
You know, that's a very strong message. He basically wants the money spent on actual equipment like jets and new technology instead of just making investors wealthy.
And the reaction from the industry was like a roller coaster. At first, the stock prices for big companies like Lockheed Martin shot up because of the prospect of massive new contracts.
But then they plummeted, right?
Exactly. Once the market understood the ban on buybacks, investors got very nervous. The news described it as market jitters. Some institutional investors worry that without these financial rewards, people won't want to invest in the defense sector anymore.
It really shows a more interventionist approach from the administration. That means the government is getting much more involved in how these private companies run their business.
It signals a big change in the military-industrial complex. The administration wants to ensure there is no corporate waste as they prepare for potential operations in Latin America and beyond.
It's a bold strategy, increasing military might while keeping a very tight grip on the checkbook.
It'll be fascinating to see how this affects the industry in the long run.
Definitely. Thanks for joining us for this update, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye, everyone.
Welcome to the Daily Pulse. I'm Alex.
And I'm Jamie. Stay warm today, everyone, because we are starting with some chilling news from the UK.
Literally. A vicious cold snap has hit the United Kingdom, and the National Health Service, or the NHS, is officially sounding the alarm.
Right. It's been a very tough week. New figures show that hospitalizations for the flu have risen by 9% in just 7 days. That is a huge jump for such a short time.
Wow, 9%. That's significant. And it isn't just the flu, right? I heard norovirus and COVID-19 are also on the rise.
Exactly. It's like a triple threat of winter viruses. Because of this, hospital bed occupancy has reached 92%. That is considered a critical level.
I can only imagine how hard the doctors and nurses are working. Professor Meghana Pandit mentioned that the influx of patients is something they haven't seen since the peak of the pandemic years.
It's definitely a high-pressure situation. Beyond the viruses, many people are ending up in the hospital with injuries caused by the icy conditions on the streets.
You know, Jamie, these health challenges are a global concern. Even President Trump, in his current term, has been emphasizing the importance of hospital efficiency and protecting the most vulnerable citizens during peak seasons in the United States.
That's true. Every country is trying to find the best way to manage these surges. In the UK, they recorded over 101,000 ambulance handovers in just the first week of January.
101,000? That's incredible. But there is a bit of good news, right?
Yes, despite the high volume, average handover times are actually better than last year. The health officials said this is thanks to tireless work and better planning for the winter.
That's a relief. However, Health Secretary Wes Streeting said the country is not out of the woods yet.
Not out of the woods yet. That's a great phrase for our listeners. It means the danger or the difficult part is not over.
Exactly. The government is now launching an emergency jab drive, which is another word for a vaccination campaign. They are sending thousands of reminders to parents and the elderly.
It's going to be a long month. Stay safe, stay warm, and get those vaccinations if you can.
Well said, Jamie. Thanks for listening, everyone.